Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to this story of Operation Unicorn. Now, this is a story of a princess who grew up to be a great queen. It's also the story about love, the love of a princess, the love of a queen, the love of the people, and the love of unicorns. And a top secret plan for her farewell, which was called Operation Unicorn. So, why is this story called Operation Unicorn? Well, we all know that unicorns are magical. They possess the superpower of harmony. But the unicorn is also Scotland's heraldic emblem and has been for over 700 years. And this princess loves horses, which are a bit like unicorns, and Scotland. But as with all good stories, we need to start at the beginning. Once upon a time, nearly 100 years ago, in the reign of King George V, a princess is born to his second son, who is also called George, and she is named after her mother, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, but everyone calls her Lilibet. One of the skills a princess must have is to be able to ride, and Elizabeth learns early. She's given a pony by her grandfather, King George V, on her 4th birthday. Maybe she imagines Susan as a magic unicorn going on adventures together. Now, the whole family loved Welsh corgis, and there were a lot of them. And on her 7th birthday, Princess Elizabeth, who loved them too, was given her own corgi called Dookie. And he was the first of over 30 corgis that she had during her lifetime. Elizabeth's destiny completely changes when King George V dies when Elizabeth is about 11. And her father becomes the king, King George VI, because his older brother Edward doesn't want to be king. And this means that Elizabeth will be the next queen. When Elizabeth is 14, World War II starts. And as a princess, it is her duty to do what she can to help. So she speaks to the children every day on the radio to cheer them up. The war goes on for years. And as soon as she is 18, Elizabeth joins the army, doing her bit for the war effort. Elizabeth is the first princess to be in the forces. At the age of 20, Elizabeth is invited to Wales to be invested by the Druids as an honorary ovate of the Bards of Wales at the National Eisteddfod. This is an ancient ceremony where a sacred sword was passed over her head. But finally, the war is over and everyone is celebrating. And there is an extra celebration when Elizabeth gets married to a Greek prince called Philip in 1947. And another party in 1948 when they have a baby boy, Prince Charles, who will be the next king. But the king isn't very well. And so Elizabeth and Philip are sent on a state visit to Kenya. And while they are there, they have a wildlife tour, which Elizabeth absolutely loves. But after only a few days. They hear that King George VI has died. Elizabeth is now the Queen, and her life changes again. Elizabeth dedicates her life to her people when she is crowned Queen. And there is the biggest party of all. Now, our story jumps about 70 years into the future. The story of Operation Unicorn is about to begin. It's 2022, the year of the Platinum Jubilee. Elizabeth is the longest reigning monarch ever. But she isn't well. She's 96, still working, but wobbly on her legs. And her beloved Philip died in 2021. To commemorate her Platinum Jubilee, the Queen creates the Queen's Green Canopy, a plan to plant 1 million trees in the United Kingdom. In the summer of 2022, after the Jubilee, the Queen arrives at Balmoral Castle. Ever since Queen Victoria, the royal family go to Balmoral in Scotland for their holidays, because here they can play and relax out of the public gaze. For the Queen, it is a place of magic, of freedom and purple moors to go horse riding or unicorn riding and to roam with the dogs. On Tuesday, the 6th of September, the Queen, before meeting the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has her picture taken. She looks frail, but very happy. But 2 days later, on the Thursday, the BBC announces that the Queen is poorly. Her daughter, Princess Anne, is by her side. Everyone is thinking of her. Later, the people praying outside Buckingham Palace are astonished to see a rare double rainbow. And the magic rainbow was seen all over London, over Big Ben and Windsor Castle. Is it a sign, the people ask? Everyone is waiting for the news, but at 6:30, the newsreader says, the Queen is dead. It's like a shockwave hits everyone at once. The next day, at the most ancient magical place in the realm, Stonehenge, the army fires 96 rounds in her honour, and Operation Unicorn begins. Friday's newspapers are full of photos of the Queen's life. Memories of Elizabeth with her mother, the Queen Mother, and her sister, Margaret, and Elizabeth riding her horse, Emma, which she did until her last few months, and the legacy of film and photographs that she left, a favourite hobby. And more memories of Philip and their many state visits, and of family time with their children, and with her best friend, her stylist of over 30 years. And maybe the best memories of all of Elizabeth as a nature lover, the Queen's favourite pastimes, exploring the moors around Balmoral by foot or horse, and breeding her beloved corgis and dorgies. The first official step of Operation Unicorn is to recognise Charles as the new king. He must hurry to London with his wife Camilla, the Queen Consort, for the royal proclamation. Long live the King. After lying in state in Balmoral for the staff and family to pay their respects, Operation Unicorn is on the move. And on Monday, the Queen's coffin leaves Balmoral to start the long journey to its final resting place in Windsor Castle next to Prince Philip. The Queen's coffin makes the long journey to Edinburgh. The original Operation Unicorn plan used trains. However, the Queen changed it so that people could pay their respects along the route. The first stop is the Palace of Holyrood, the Queen's home in Edinburgh. Here, the coffin lies in state for the people to come and visit. The next day, there is a Thanksgiving service at St. Giles Cathedral. Here, the Scottish crown is placed on the coffin. And that evening, the Queen leaves Scotland. The coffin is flown to RAF Northolt, which is near Windsor Castle, but it doesn't go to Windsor yet. Now that the coffin has arrived in London, Operation Unicorn now includes Operation London Bridge, the English plan. And the first stop is to return home. The coffin is driven to Buckingham Palace, her London home, so that her friends and family can say goodbye in private. The following day, the Queen is handed to the people. The coffin is taken to Westminster Hall, where for 5 days and nights a queue of people come to say thank you and goodbye. On the Friday evening, her 4 children, King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince Andrew, come to stand vigil by the coffin in their military uniforms. On Sunday evening, the day before the funeral, President Biden of the USA comes to pay his respects, one head of state to another. And later that night, the queue is closed. No one else can join. Some people have queued for 2 days, even David Beckham. On the day of the main funeral at 6:30 on the Monday, September the 19th, the doors are closed and the last person in maybe the longest queue ever bows their head to the Queen. Everyone is watching as the coffin is taken to Westminster Abbey. The route is packed with people. The bishops begin the service. On the Queen's coffin are her crown and also the sceptre and the orb, and a beautiful garland of flowers from her gardens, roses, rosemary for remembrance, oak for strength, and myrtle, a sprig cut from a bush that came from her wedding bouquet, and with a note from Charles, in loving and devoted memory. Everyone is silent for 2 minutes after the bishop asks God to take Elizabeth's soul. And there is the haunting sounds of a lone piper floating away high above. The coffin is then lifted onto a gun carriage and pulled by 142 sailors through the royal parks to Wellington Arch. It's a beautiful but very sad procession. The procession passes the statues of some of the people that the Queen loved the most. First, it passes the statue of Churchill, the Queen's first Prime Minister. She had 15 Prime Ministers during her reign. And most loved of all, after passing through the Horse Guards Arch, the procession passes the statues of her parents, King George VI and Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And the procession arrives at Wellington Arch, and the coffin is transferred to the hearse and begins its final journey to Windsor Castle. Wellington Arch is named after the Duke of Wellington, and he served Queen Victoria as the commander of her forces. And now is the final leg of Operation Unicorn. As the hearse is taken from Wellington Arch to Windsor Castle. Again, the route is lined with well-wishers, right up to the gates of the castle. The coffin is carried into the choir of St. George's Chapel for the committal service. During the service, the crown, the sceptre, and the orb are placed on the altar. And then the Lord Chamberlain, the Queen's most trusted servant, breaks his wand and puts it on the coffin. His duty to the Queen is complete. The coffin is lowered into the crypt below the chapel to the slow lament of the Scottish piper. Goodbye, Queen Elizabeth II, and thank you. Later that evening, the Queen is buried. She is now at rest, and her children say their final goodbyes as the vault is sealed forever. Last thing that night on the day of the funeral, there was a last royal tweet, a quote from Hamlet by Shakespeare. May angels sing thee to thy rest. Fly well, Queen Elizabeth II, and rest in peace. And a beautiful photograph of her walking through the heather on the moorlands in the Scottish Highlands with a headscarf and her dogs. 10 days later, the new ledger stone with the names of Elizabeth, her parents, and Philip is in place. Operation Unicorn is now complete, and the royal tomb is open to view by the public. So Queen Elizabeth II joins her ancestors as a famous queen. And here we have Elizabeth I with the royal emblem of England, the lion, and Mary, Queen of Scots, with the emblem of Scotland, the unicorn, and Elizabeth II in the middle, uniting the lion and the unicorn. And I'm sure that Elizabeth II will also become a fairy tale queen as one of the greatest queens of all time. And this story of Operation Unicorn, although it's been based in fact, and you can Google all the information on the internet, there's also a magical part of this story that comes purely from my imagination. And I really hope that you've enjoyed it. And that one day you'll want to tell your children and grandchildren all about the amazing Queen Elizabeth II. And that's the end of this story of Operation Unicorn. How many unicorns did you find hiding in the pages? The answer is in the next slide. Goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you managed to find all the unicorns, and do share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel because I have other children's stories on there too. And in fact, this story came about from an adult story which used astrology. And maybe if you're listening to this as an adult, you'd be interested in the astrology version.